Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pet gorilla, George. Welcome back to my retrospective on the DC animated movie universe. Today, I'm going to be reviewing a very interesting movie. We don't have a Taylor Swift video. A very interesting Batman movie is what we have. But before I discuss that movie as a whole, I need to discuss a few concepts this movie borrows. We start off with the battle for the cowl. This is a story from a while back that showcases Dick Grayson struggling to become the new Batman after the apparent death of Bruce Wayne, which wasn't really a death, but really a radion bullet sending him back several centuries into the past during the Final Crisis Nexus event. My favorite aspect of this story is Dick Grayson struggling to become the new Batman, even after he was clearly the right choice. Then there's the character of Batwoman, specifically Kate Kane. This is Bruce Wayne's little cousin, daughter of Martha Wayne's brother Jacob. She's not the first character to don the Batwoman persona, but she is the first Batwoman to represent an LGBTQ+ community, and the first Batman side character to have a really bad TV series. And hopefully the last, because this show is just awful. So, with Damian Wayne, Battle for the Cowl, the entire Dick Grayson Batman era as a whole, and Kate Kane, we got a pretty interesting movie that is pretty hard to discuss without delving into major spoilers. But considering the internet has torn this thing apart for the last 7 years, I figured I'd give it my shots. This is Batman, Bad Blood. Again, not a Taylor Swift video. Bruce Wayne, still voiced by Jason Momoa, is missing. Alfred, voiced this time by James Garrett, covers for him while Nightwing, voiced again by Sean Marr, and Robin, voiced again by Stuart Allen, patrol Gotham in his stead. A new player, Batwoman, voiced by Yvonne Strahovski, investigates Batman's disappearance. So this has a ton of great potential for a great Dick Grayson-centered story. Watching him become the new Dark Knight and watching over the likes of Bruce Wayne's son was a great part of the later part of the Grant Morrison run. How does he deal with Gotham's worst? The Joker, Two-Face, Black Mask, Killer Croc, many others. This would have been a great movie to explore all of that, but I feel like they prioritized the Damian Wayne story with Talia returning, his clone the Heretic making an appearance, and two new characters, both of which are new additions to the world. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it could have been handled a lot better and a lot differently if I was in charge. But now is not the time for that. Now is the time for discussing the movie and its characters and animation and action. So my favorite character is Dick Grayson. I already find him to be the most complex Robin, even though Tim Drake is my favorite Robin, because of how deep his story is, even after he becomes Nightwing. This movie is no different in that regard. Dick doesn't want to be Batman, but he doesn't have a choice. Also, with that regard, he has to take care of this little brat. So, yeah, this movie is no different in that regard, but I would have preferred if they had it more of Dick Grayson's movie as opposed to, the entire Bat family. They could have done it in two ways. Either showcasing him working as the Bat alongside Damian's Robin, with some flashbacks thrown in for good measure of him being Robin alongside Batman, or my preferred route, make it a movie based on the original dynamic duo as a whole. I don't really care what you do, just make it Batman and Nightwing working alongside each other to take out a threat, with flashbacks of their past thrown in for good measure. It would have been an amazing movie if these were the routes they took. Instead, we get a pretty good version of this story, but not a great one. But I love Nightwing enough to give it a pass. Damian is pretty good, but is mainly used as a plot device and doesn't add too much to the story. but we'll get into the worst part of that aspect later. Now, Batwoman. I never really cared for this character because she was just a violent version of Batgirl that fought Batman's code so viciously. She uses a gun, for Christ's sake. You might be saying, but Jason Todd used guns too. Yeah, he did. When he wasn't working alongside Batman. Not when he was with him. Come on, guys. I'm happy you have lesbian representation in your movie and your comics. But don't make her fight Batman's code. It's against everything he stands for. Also, don't mock him in your live-action show. You wouldn't have existed if Batman wasn't around. My little tangent on this character aside, Batwoman was an okay addition to this movie. This is all I have to say about her. Then there's Batwing, Lucius Fox's son who's in the military. This is a good idea for a character, but kind of weird to give him an armored suit. I still like the character enough because of Gaius Charles' performance and how he works off of Ernie Hudson's Lucius. Yes, Ernie Hudson plays Lucius Fox in this. Freaking Winston Zedmore is Lucius Fox. Need I say anything else? Alright. Alfred was cool, especially because we got to see him in action. But the fact that he kills two villains in 30 seconds and then cracks a joke about it was odd. Yeah, remember these movies are pretty nutsy in regards to death and reactions. But not like this. This is not a Tarantino film, guys. You can't death-proof this. You can't crack a joke after killing someone. This isn't magical fantasy world. Even though this is the world of comics, we should have some sense of regret in regards to death. Yeah, that's just a nitpick at this point. Alright, let's talk about the villains. Because there are a lot of villains. Now, you heard me mention Black Mask earlier, but he actually made an appearance in this movie. But he didn't really do anything. I love Roman Sionis in the comics because of how violent and evil he is, and the Red Hood movie did a great job with that. But here, they didn't really do that. So, there. The actual villains are a collection of some minor villains. The Mad Hatter, Killer Moth, and Firefly are the most recognizable, and they were pretty cool to see, even if they kind of died. Very gruesome deaths, which were funny and also shocking to see. They were still cool to see, nonetheless, but come on, really? You don't have to be this over the top. We also have the Calculator, which is an odd choice, but I really love the weird computer eye he has. Electrocutioner is here with an infinitely worse design compared to Arkham Origins' Electrocutioner. There's also Tux, Onyx, and Hellhound, who don't do anything at all, but I really want to discuss the main villains of this film. The Heretic was a huge improvement over his comic book counterpart, not just in design, but also in regards to presence. He's still a clone of Damian Wayne, but I was willing to see how they could have made him a great villain and final threat. Too bad for me, because he was killed 50 minutes into the movie. I wish too much sometimes. The actual main villain is Talia al Ghul, and this is where the rant begins. First things first, I hate New 52 Talia. This version of the comics set her up as a caring mother until she rather quickly becomes a villain. The other reason I'm more sour about this character nowadays is because she is one large plot device, which I find a bit sexist. She's Batman's baby mama and is used with whatever the plot needs her to be used, so she's an object, I guess. The original Talia was meant to charm Batman to get into his head so Raish could get to Batman afterwards. But we can't have that because we lost great comic book writers these days, I guess. Talia in this movie is New 52 Talia, and I hate this switch because she was the complete opposite in her last appearance, and that makes no sense to that version of the character. So what would I have done? Simple answer. Make Raish the main villain. I know he was shown to die in Son of Batman, but you could say he was revived by the Lazarus Pit and led an army to go after Batman in order to break him down psychologically and kill Damian for betraying him. He could have used some violent foes of the Dark Knight. Deathstroke could have gone back to him. Bane's strength, the Mad Hatter's intellect, and Killer Moth and Firefly's weird use of weaponry. Yeah. Use the Heretic as extra icing on the cake to this cake of evil, I guess. The bad blood would be the discovery of the idea that the heretic is the clone of Damien. That's how I would do it. But that one is just a man's dream, and a story I don't think they would ever do. The point is that Talia is a bad villain and badly handled in this film. But other than that, most of the time, the characters are pretty decent and do well with the story. As far as the animation is covered, it still looks as good as it has ever looked. Characters have distinct designs, the backgrounds look great, and the fight scenes are animated well. As far as violence goes, some villains die in over the top ways. There's a bit of blood in certain areas. And yes, there is a scene where Bruce Wayne's mind is being melded to believe he's having a good time. I didn't mention Batman here because he's mainly a plot device, by the way. That's all I have to say. The action sequences are cool, but only two stand out. The best and the worst. The worst is the final action scene, where there's a summit with a mind-controlled Batman on a blimp and the world's leaders are being hypnotized. Two things. One, Incredibles 2 did it better. Two, this feels like a bit of filler. It's still a good scene, but it still has problems. The battle on the cathedral grounds was a ton of fun, on the other hand. And I liked watching the Bat family work together to take out the nuns and the super criminals. It was a cool set that I doubt we'll ever see to this degree ever again in live action. Actually, you know what? In animation, it looks great, but in live action, we had the Guardians 3 hallway fight, which is very similar. So in animation, at least, we won't see this ever again. So yeah, Batman Bad Blood is not bad, but the concept is better than the execution. For that all exact reasons, the movie does suffer, and I doubt I'll ever watch it again after this. But I do enjoy aspects of this movie enough to give it a score of an 8 out of 10. It could have been great, but it just wasn't. Okay, that was a lot for one review, but I'll be taking a break from the DCAMU next week to take a look at a very clumsy movie that was the second entry to the Dead on Arrival DC Extended Universe. Until then, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friend, is a wrap. See you next week.